Hello, in this video we're going to be talking about macromolecules, so let's not waste any of your time. Let's get right to it. Now when we're talking macromolecules, hey, we're talking about four specific items. Okay, we're talking about carbohydrates, we're talking about lipids, we're talking about proteins, we're talking about nucleic acids. Each of those will have their own separate video that we will discuss and set up and talk about the structure, function, and all the needed information about those. But when we talk about macromolecules, these four are unique from any other molecule in the ways that I've listed here. One, that they're organic. Okay, in other words, they contain carbon. And there are other molecules that can contain carbon, carbon dioxide, methane, that kind of stuff. But they don't have the other. They have to have all of these to be considered one of the groups of macromolecules. But again, organic because they contain carbon. They're necessary for life. Okay, and again, you could say carbon dioxide is necessary for life. I mean, that's what plants need to conduct photosynthesis. But again, they don't have all five of the check boxes. The third one, and that's where it eliminates a lot of them, it comes from the foods that we eat. All of these we get from the food, and we'll talk about those in full context in many other chapters. They're also considered macromolecules because they're considered organic, because they contain all three of the needed ingredients to be considered organic. That's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. It doesn't have to be in a particular amount, but if you have all three of those, then you're considered organic. And they're also unique because they have lots of carbon-hydrogen bonds, and because of that, they contain lots of energy. When we look at cellular respiration, when we look at photosynthesis, you'll see that those hydrogens, the more plentiful you have of hydrogens, the more energy you can provide for the organism as a food source, because those are carved off, and it's those electrons that are used to create ATP. And when you're making ATP, that's going to be the energy source for the cell, and the production of that is what gets you invited into the macromolecule group. The uniqueness of this video is that you're going to hear lots of things that you hear lots of times throughout the semester or school year, depending on where you are. Things like dehydration synthesis, hydrolysis. These macromolecules are built and taken apart by using those two processes that you will see today in this video, and that we will talk about a bunch in the upcoming weeks. Okay. Carbon is a very, very unique element, and its uniqueness is what allows all of this to happen. This is carbon over here. Picture that the little black circle is carbon, and in the four whites, those are hydrogens. The column that carbon is in allows it to have four bonds. It can bond with four elements. In other words, it can go in all four directions. All other elements that are not in that column can bond with three or two or one, and so they can go in several directions. But when you can go in all four directions, you can build what we call lattice type molecules. And if you know what a lattice fencing is, or a lattice gate, you understand that context. But that's a picture of lattice over there. The bottom picture, that's a lattice screen going in all directions. In other words, if you can build up and down and right and left, and you can keep adding on to that, you can build enormous molecules. And the picture above the lattice, the middle picture over there, that's a picture of a lattice molecule, a carbon lattice molecule. It can just build and build and get as large as it needs to be. And carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic, DNA, RNA, proteins. These are very, very, very large molecules. So that's the uniqueness that carbon allows us to do. Okay. Another context that you're going to hear a bunch in the coming weeks that you'll just need to make sure that you understand, and that as we see it throughout the semester or school year, we will point it out, but we'll see it a bunch, and that's the hydroxyls, the OH bonds at the ends of or along the edges of macromolecules. These are a unique bond, a unique point, because they're a bonding pair called a hydroxyl. But anytime you see this OH molecule, you're going to recognize it as a connection point, a place that another molecule that can come along and attach on. Just like if you're going to attach a trailer to a vehicle, a truck, you got that trailer hitch back there. OHs are the trailer hitches of molecules. You see an OH, it's to be recognized that that is an attachment point for somebody else. And when you see two molecules that are bonded together, you can understand that there used to be an OH on each end, and because of dehydration synthesis, that has changed, which we will talk about in our next slide. Okay, along with OHs and the fact that carbon is such a unique element, another concept that you will hear a bunch of in the coming weeks is dehydration synthesis. This is one that I could possibly mention if I choose to. Every time we get together, in every instance that we're talking about something, there could be an opportunity to talk about dehydration synthesis. And early on, I'll talk about it as much as needed to help you to understand this concept. But dehydration synthesis is a process that is used to build molecules. Okay, hydrolysis, which we'll talk about in the next slide, is the process used to break down molecules. But when we build molecules, we use dehydration synthesis, and a couple of things happen. You can see in the diagram there below me, to the far left, that's the beginning. It's kind of like a beginning, a transition, and an after in that diagram. But you have two monomers, okay, and they each have those OH bonding pairs, which are the attachment points, which are the trailer hitches, as we just mentioned. They each have one of those, and that is at the point that they're going to connect. They're going to bond together. Okay, and in that process, when they bond together, you can see the letters in blue. You have two H's and an O. And hopefully, whenever you hear two H's and an O, or H2O, you understand that water is being made there. And that's why it's called dehydration. The molecule is losing water. It's not really dehydrating. I mean, that's more of a us as an organism process. But it's just a reference point to the name, dehydration synthesis. But a water molecule is lost. Okay, and of course your body can use that for lots of purposes, and we'll talk when we get to photosynthesis and cell respiration, chapter 7 and 8 and 6 as well. We'll see what this water molecules, water molecules are used for. But then when the molecules come together, the one remaining oxygen is that connection point. So you'll hear me refer to many times, especially through chapter 8, that there's an element that is the bonding element. And in this case, it's going to be oxygen. In others, it's nitrogen. It just kind of varies. It's not one particular element, but there is a bonding element. There's a bonding pair, the OHs, a bonding element, in a process, dehydration synthesis, that this occurs. But the main point is that a water molecule is lost, and the OHs are the connection point, and in this case the oxygen is the bonding element. Now for hydrolysis, which is the exact opposite. Okay, it returns the molecules to their original state. That's the process there. But you can see to the far left, the diagram below me, we had that bonding, those monomers bonded together. In this case, oxygen is the bonding element. Okay, now what happens here, as I mentioned, is the exact opposite of dehydration synthesis. A water molecule comes in, okay, and you can think of it as dissolving the bond. That's the one kind of a mental visual way to think about it, that it dissolves the bond, and in those OHs, those H2Os, they separate, and everything returns the way it was. One H and one O goes with one monomer, and the H bonds with the other oxygen to return those OH bonding pairs, those attachment points, those trailer hitches, to their original state, as you can see in the far right of that diagram below me. Well, that is our video on macromolecules, kind of a general information, including all of the things that we're going to talk plenty about throughout the semester or school year: dehydration synthesis, hydrolysis, the OH attachment points, the bonding elements, the usefulness of carbon, all that stuff. So again, this video was full of things that not just for this chapter or this section of the textbook, but things that we will be using and discussing all school year or semester long. So the next time we get together, we'll be talking about carbohydrates. So we'll see you then.